explain, first of all, why we are taking the unusual step of videotaping this memorial to Stephanie. In the Jewish tradition, any memorial, any service, any eulogy is for the purpose of comforting the living, more than it is for the sake of the one who has passed on. And with that in mind, all of us who are speaking this evening are addressing ourselves to Stephanie's beloved parents, Leon and Isabel Bernstein. They can't be with us tonight. They're in New York, but they wanted very much to be part of this proceedings. And with that in mind, we're videotaping the proceedings so that they can share in it. On behalf of her parents, I'd like to thank everyone who's come here tonight, in particular Stephanie's cousins, Yuri and Paula Bernstein, and to speak for a moment of some of the other members of our larger community who are here tonight. Don Michelle. Don, did you?
I know there's some of the officers of the Venice Action Committee who are here. Some members of the Venice Action Committee are here who we work very closely with and have been a big support to us through the years. Captain Wilbanks from the Los Angeles Police Department is here. Mary Lee Gray from Dean Dan's, the supervisor's office, is here. Ruth Galanter, our council person, is here. Those are the people that I know. I'm sure there must be others as well.
Again, on behalf of Stephanie's parents, we very much appreciate the support and the sentiments of everyone who is here. And those in the back, please come in. There are seats here. There's room for people to sit down. I think people are aware, should be aware, that in the last few days we've established Stephanie Bernstein Memorial Foundation. The purpose of the foundation is to honor two of the great loves of Stephanie's life, books and education. The foundation would be established, is established, to provide encouragement for instruction in reading and creative writing for students at the Emanuel Streisand School, our school here in the Pacific Jewish Center community, with which Stephanie was so richly and so deeply involved. And I should also announce that Stephanie's former employers, Better Communications, for whom she taught business writing, and who appreciated her so much as a professional and personally, have offered to make a major gift towards this foundation, which is also appreciated. A few very brief words about Stephanie that I think it's important to remember in this context in particular. At times, people have a misunderstanding about religious commitment, about religious passion, particularly from a Jewish point of view. There's the notion that becoming committed to traditional religiosity takes you out of the world, removes you from the people around you, from the larger community around you. Stephanie served as a particularly beautiful example of how that is not the case and need not be the case. Her involvement with Jewish tradition didn't isolate her in any way from the world around her, from the larger beauties in the world around her. If anything, it brought her even closer, gave her a richer appreciation. This was a person who was interested in absolutely everything, who had a passion and love and curiosity for every aspect of spirituality, for every aspect of beauty and decency. and goodness that you could take from the world around you. The tragedy that we're all thinking of tonight could only be compounded if somehow it were to create a more bitter sense of inward looking or isolation, sense of needing to beware or to remove ourselves from the larger world. If that were to happen, then the impact of Stephanie's death would contradict the message of her life, which was so much to take good from every corner of this wonderful world that God has made for all of us, and to give good back at the same time. And we may feel at this time some of the pain of this moment, of this evening. But we know that tomorrow evening, it is Shabbat, it's the Sabbath, and that we and all of our neighbors and all of those who loved Stephanie should be granted to feel Shabbat Shalom, to feel Sabbath peace. I'd like to call on Ephraim Shore for an English reading of Psalm number 20.
This Psalm, number 20, was chosen by a friend who spoke with Stephanie an hour before she passed away. As such, this psalm was chosen in the spirit of that conversation. To him who grants victory, a psalm to David. The Lord will answer you in the day of trouble. The name of the God of Jacob will raise you on high. He will send forth your help from the sanctuary and will strengthen you from Zion. He will accept the memorial of all your offerings of homage and will ever free your ascent offering from its ashes for constant repetition. May he grant you according to your own heart, and may he fulfill all your counsel. We shall shout for joy at your victory and rally round your banner in the name of our God. May the Lord fulfill all your desires. For now I have come to know that the Lord has granted happiness to his anointed. He will always hear him from the heaven of his sanctuary with the omnipotent acts of salvation of his right hand. Some see God in chariots, and others in horses. But as for us, we remember our God by the name of the Lord. When they knelt, they fell down. But we have always risen again and have constantly kept ourselves upright. May the Lord grant salvation. As the King, will he answer us in the day on which we call upon him. Amen.
At this point, I'd like to call upon our representative in the Los Angeles City Council, Ruth Galanter, who has been for many years committed to this same neighborhood in which so many of us here tonight live, and to which we've also made a commitment.
I wish this were a pleasanter occasion to talk with you, but it's not a pleasant occasion. It's an occasion that is very moving and very serious, and yet I hope that it's an occasion that will lead us to a greater sense of community and to, if anything, increasing our mutual support. In the last few days, many people have asked me whether, because of my personal experiences, this has special meaning to me. And of course, in a way, it must have special meaning to me. But I think that it's the same kind of meaning that it has to all of us, and especially to all women who face daily and nightly the question of how to live a productive, exciting, constructive life in a world that is apparently filled with hostility. And I hope that as we remember Stephanie and as we mourn for her, we will use this as an occasion to join together to live through this. I lived through my assault, and so did everyone near and dear to me. Many of you were involved in helping me survive that, and I know that you will be equally supportive in helping one another survive this tragedy. It's hard to know how to make sense of things like this, and I certainly cannot pretend to make sense of it. I think that it's important to remember that an assault against any member of our community is an assault against our community, and that is what makes it doubly important, multiply important, that we band together, that we provide each other with the kind of comfort that can come only from the caring of other people. I don't know Stephanie's family, but I feel that I do know them, and I'm sorry that they're not able to be here with us tonight so that we might offer them in a much more personal way, a tangible way, the kind of support and love that can be felt in this room. And I hope we never have to go through another one of these, but I thank you for coming, I thank you for caring, and I hope that we will be able to use this occasion to rise to become a better community, a stronger community, and a safer community.
Whoever sits in the refuge of the Most High, he shall dwell in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of Hashem, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, and I will trust in him, that he will deliver you from the ensnaring trap and from devastating pestilence. With his pinions he will cover you, and beneath his wings you will be protected. Shield and armor is his truth. You shall not be afraid of the terror of night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that walks in gloom, nor the destroyer who lays waste at noon. Let 1,000 encamp at your side and a myriad at your right hand, but to you they shall not approach. You shall merely peer with your eyes, and you will see the retribution of the wicked. Because you, Hashem, are my refuge, you have made the Most High your dwelling place. No evil will befall you, nor will any plague come near your tent. He will charge his angels for you to protect you in all your ways. On your palms they will carry you, lest you strike your foot against a stone. Upon the lion and the viper you will tread. You will trample the young lion and the serpent. For he has yearned for me, and I will deliver him. I will elevate him, as he knows my name. He will call upon me, and I will answer him. I am with him in distress. I will release him, and I will honor him. With long life will I satisfy him, and I will show him my salvation. With long life will I satisfy him, and I will show him my salvation.
I'd like at this point to call upon another one of our honored guests this evening. That's Mary Gray, who is from the office of our supervisor in the County of Los Angeles, Dean Damon.
I am deeply honored and privileged to join you, her family, and friends in paying high tribute to Stephanie in memoriam. We celebrate her life today, but we also recognize the wonderful accomplishments that she made, her dedication to this community, her service to the public. We will surely miss her, but more than those of us who loved her will miss her, those who she served and those that she would have served had she been allowed to remain with us. The Board of Supervisors will recognize her life and celebrate it on Tuesday at our regularly scheduled meeting by joining in a word of silent prayer as we adjourn. And a resolution will be sent to her family in New York indicating that the entire Board of Supervisors celebrated Stephanie's life and wish to pay high tribute to her. Thank you very much.
We're going to read responsively in the Hebrew Psalm 121. And if people want to participate in that, you can join in by taking Sidurim, taking prayer books. They're there. It's page 535. Page 534. point, we'd like to call upon Stephanie's cousin, Paula Bernstein.
First of all, on behalf of the Bernstein family, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here today to honor her memory. Those of you who knew and loved Stephanie would know that rather than seeing us mourn her death, she would want us here to celebrate her life. In her 41 years, Stephanie accumulated more friends and a wider range of experiences than most people manage in 10 lifetimes. She had tremendous intellectual curiosity and an open and tolerant mind. She loved many things. She loved her family, she loved her friends, she loved her writing, and she loved her Jewish community. Stephanie was a woman without a mean bone in her body. In all the years that I knew her, I never heard her say a nasty thing or a cruel thing about any other human being. I first met Stephanie 22 years ago at my own wedding to her cousin Ori. And over the ensuing years, I had many, many opportunities to experience her warmth, her love, and her generosity. I'd like to share with you just a very few of my personal memories about Stephanie. I remember when I was getting ready to drive by myself cross country to medical school, Stephanie arrived at my house with a huge basket that she'd made full of gourmet goodies. I shouldn't starve on the way. I remember how after our daughter was born, and our daughter spent the first 2 months of her life in the neonatal intensive care unit, how Stephanie would come 3 and 4 times a week just to be with the baby, and how when the baby needed blood, it was Stephanie who had the only compatible blood type in the family who gave over and over again. I especially remember and want to share with you my final memory of Stephanie, which was the very day of her death. Our family got together and we had brunch at a restaurant on Main Street. And after brunch, we all walked down the street to walk Stephanie back to her apartment. And she stopped along the way at a candy store to get some gum. And on her way out, she backtracked about half a block to give some money to a destitute, homeless man who was sitting in the street. And that was Stephanie. That was the kind of person that she was. In my mind, there is no way to find meaning in her death. It was a brutal, violent, senseless death. But there was tremendous meaning and tremendous love in her life. And I know that no one who is here in this room will ever forget her.
We'd like to call at this point upon Stephanie's friend and colleague, Harlan Ellison.
For the most part, I'm just angry, but anger doesn't do anybody much good, so let me tell you, this was a terrific person. I mean, we're talking a funny person. She was really hilarious, also very good with grammar. We sat an entire evening and went over correcting the typographical errors and the grammatical errors of Edwin Meese's presidential report on pornography, laughing all the way and knowing the man was a thief from the outset, and Stephanie knew that. She came out here in '73. She came out here in large part because we knocked each other down in the hallway at Harper and Row. We, as they say in the old Frank Capra movies, we met cute. I bounded out of an elevator. They were doing one of my books, and Stephanie was a junior editor, and we knocked each other ass over tea kettle, papers every which direction. And as I was helping her pick them up, I looked up and I saw this terrific face. And I said, "How'd you like to have dinner tonight?" She said, "Fine." And we were friends for 20 years thereafter. When she came out here in large measure to get away from what she saw as the growing violence in New York. I've been playing with that one a lot for the last few days. My favorite memory of Stephanie, and it's really all I have to share with you that isn't such a geschrei, you wouldn't want to hear it in these halls, was a night we had heard there was a really angry a Chinese restaurant where they made food so hot that it would stun a police dog. And we got the address from some dark, shadowy figure in an alleyway, and we went down Hollywood Boulevard, and there, sandwiched between a laundry and a rug shop, was this dark doorway. And we went inside, and there was no one there. There were no menus on the table, and there were 2 or 3 booths. And we sat down, and she said, "I think we have fallen into a dope den." And I said, "If they use a lot of soy sauce, okay." Out of the back came one of those guys that you used to read about in Fu Manchu stories. Terrible, strange, dark, withered little figure made of papyrus. And Stephanie, who knew how to order better than I did when we were doing Hunan, said to him, "We would like such and such and such and such and such and such." He looked at her as if she were speaking Sanskrit. He had no idea. And he indicated that we would take what we were given. I wanted to bolt on the spot. She held me back. She said, "No, no, we must be brave." This is the way she talked. "No, no, we must be brave." The food was so hot, it turned my eyebrows white. She ate like a stevedore, more and more and more, and it wasn't hot enough. Steam came out of my ears. Tears rolled down my cheeks. She loved it. When we were done, we left. A few weeks later, we decided to do it again. We came back to the restaurant, and it was closed. And we went next door to the rug shop and asked the owner what happened. And the man said he was thrown out of there for killing his patrons. 2 people had heart attacks. When I told Stephanie that, she spent weeks trying to locate where this man had relocated. This was a funny lady, just as sweet as she seemed to be. As Paula said, not a mean bone in her body. Where she went and whom she touched, remember. And that's the only way any of us are remembered. If kings and emperors and popes and great rabbis go down to dust, the only way anyone is ever remembered is in the minds and in the hearts of those who passed her on the way past. The footsteps were deep, and if that's all we can take away tonight, that's the best we've got.
Now to call upon Stephanie's rabbi, who is the rabbi of this community, Rabbi Daniel Lapin.
I appreciate all of you who have already spoken this evening. Each of you has attempted to either respond to these events or to describe Stephanie as you knew her. And that is precisely the purpose of this evening. In Jewish tradition, a memorial service is for the purpose of eulogizing. It's what we call a hesped. And I too grappled over the last couple of days with how it was I was going to attempt to eulogize this very special young woman. And I finally decided that I operated at a certain handicap. Her cousin, Paula, spoke with obvious sincerity. Paula's known her for over 20 years. Harlan, that was a very valuable picture you gave us. But as her rabbi, I felt that my handicap was that I would sound as if I was doing this professionally. And so I decided to do nothing this evening except to quote other people. I will address myself to the video camera for a moment and tell you, Isabel, and to tell you, Leon, that you will hear me quoting you too in the minutes ahead. But for the essential part of my hesped and of my eulogy, I decided to quote members of this community who cannot be fooled. There are certain members of this community, and you will instantly know who they are, who are immune to all sham, who can shrug off pretense, and have nothing but contempt for fakery. And I felt that if I told you, in their words, a little bit about Stephanie, that could perhaps be the most eloquent eulogy of all. And that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read to you letters written to the Bernsteins in Scarsdale. And once I've finished reading them to you this evening, they will be packaged in an envelope and mailed across the country. And these letters were written by children 5 years old and 6 years old, 7 years old and 8 years old, children whose lives Stephanie touched. My wife had the very sad task yesterday afternoon of telling these children what had happened. And these are children whose parents have made their home in this neighborhood, parents who've made a long-term commitment to this neighborhood, whose families are not about to be dislodged. And here are some of the letters the children wrote. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bernstein, I'm very sad that your daughter passed away. I hope that you feel nice things from now on. I loved when she used to come to our house for Shabbat. Love. Anna Bunstein, signed by Stasha. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bernstein, I know how you feel about the death of your daughter. I loved her very much. She used to read me a lot of stories. I wish I could do more to make you feel better. Love, Deborah. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bernstein, I'm so sorry about the loss of your daughter Stephanie, who has just passed away. It was a big shock to me because I knew her very well. I wish she was still alive. Love, Joshua. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bernstein, I'm very sorry to hear your daughter passed away. She used to live on the same block as me. She used to come over and she was very kind. When my sister was cold, walking home from synagogue one night, Miss Bernstein lent her her shawl. I liked to be with her a lot. Love, Rebecca. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bernstein, I'm very sorry that your daughter passed away. I hope you will never, never again have a thing like this happen. She was very nice to me every time I saw her. I felt like crying when I heard what happened. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bernstein, your daughter really made me feel good on Shabbat when she said Good Shabbos to me. She made me feel that without that Good Shabbos smile, my Sabbath would not be as nice. A lot of times I made an effort to make her have a special Shabbat. Love, Devorah. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bernstein, I felt like crying when I heard your daughter died. I hope you forget about it soon and have the rest of your life happy. She was a very nice lady. Love, Rena. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bernstein, I remember when your daughter came to our house for Shabbat lunch recently. It was a lot of fun. She read us a book and she played with us. Your daughter was very nice. Please get happy soon. Love, Deborah. Of course, there is no possible attempt as human beings to try and find meaning. But nonetheless, there is a correct response to make certain that this hideous crime doesn't just become another meaningless Los Angeles crime statistic. and something that'll fade away entirely. We have been conditioned to believe that civilized people behave in certain ways. We've been conditioned to suppose that it's not right to cry, but there are times when it's absolutely right to cry. We've been conditioned to think that tolerance is a virtue. Tolerance, 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 tolerance. That's almost all I hear echoing around these room halls for the last 20 years. Shakespeare said in the second act of Romeo and Juliet, through the mouth of Friar Lawrence, virtue itself turns into vice, being misapplied, and vice sometimes by action dignified. Do you hear what Shakespeare is telling us? That under the wrong circumstances, that which is regarded as a virtue can itself turn into a vice. To tolerate the intolerable is uncivilized. To allow an event like this to just fade from the front pages and gradually just become a dusty memory, that is to deny any meaning whatsoever to this thing. And that is something that I want to spend just a few moments urging all of us not to allow. We've been trained never to feel anger, that somehow indignation is incorrect. But I must remind you that for 200 years, this nation has carefully crafted a civilization and a culture which is probably as great as anything the world has ever seen. And in the last 200 years, there have been many expressions of national outrage, many moods of anger that have swept the country over evils. And through collective action, those evils have been dispelled. Why is it that in a time of epidemic, nobody is willing to express anger at crime? But that needs a little more explanation. From a moral perspective, not to show anger at the evil is wrong. To tolerate the intolerable is uncivilized. And to accept the unacceptable is bestial. And to simply carry placards against crime simply will not do. Because you see, Stephanie didn't die because of some isolated random accident. Stephanie died because for 20 years we have had more tolerance for the aggressor than we have for the victim. We have turned morality on its head in this country for 20 years. Stephanie Bernstein died not as a random accident, but as part of a national epidemic. An innocent, beautiful young woman who faces the ultimate human terror. She had to look into the face of a sickeningly violent thug and to see cold, killing eyes, eyes that showed no mercy. And then she died. The Los Angeles Times has yet to note this event. Not any mention of it at all. The West Side section published this morning. The Outlook has run it 3 days consecutively, and the LA Times ignores it. This is not worthy of mention. People, where is our anger? How can we tolerate this? What is going on? And I'm not blaming the police. We here in Venice enjoy a very close relationship, very supportive relationship with some very fine officers. I will share with you the shocking information that only 20 minutes before this animal broke into her apartment, he was stopped on the street and questioned. And the officers knew that he was out on parole for 2 months, and they knew what had happened, but there was absolutely nothing they could do. Stephanie died because of the fundamental immorality of our criminal justice system. Don't be angry at crime. Where are you going to find crime to express anger to? Who is crime? Express anger at your elected representatives. Express anger at a judiciary that doesn't feel in any way compelled to stand up as much for us, for decent, law-abiding citizens of all races and of all religions, people in this neighborhood and in other neighborhoods around the country who demand the right to freedom on their streets, who demand the right to safe refuge in their homes. There's a focus for our anger, and not to show that anger is to condemn this event to the back pages of a dusty old newspaper. W.H. Auden stood in front of the museum, in front of a painting in the Museum of Modern Art, and the painting was the painting by Bruegel of Icarus having flown too close to the sun with his rat's wings, died and tumbled into the ocean. And Auden writes a poem interpreting the meaning of this picture. And on the picture, as this young boy perishes in the ocean, many things around him are carrying on. A ship sails by, and none of the sailors pay any attention. And a farmer, seemingly adjacent to the tragedy, continues with his ploughing. And as Auden puts it, quite leisurely from the disaster, the ploughman may have heard the splash, the forsaken cry, but for him it was not an important failure. Do you realize that we're in the midst of an epidemic? Open your papers tonight, there'll be other murders. Open them tomorrow, more murders again. Our anger is not focused at the police. The police are trying to do a fine job. We despair, together with the officers in Venice that we've spoken to over the last decade, who in cases have indicated to us the sense of futility they feel, the sense of utter hopelessness, that their work, their dangerous mission is to put a criminal behind bars. And they say to us, in no time at all, he'll be back on the streets. How can we expect brave officers of the law to do their job, knowing what this really means? I want to make absolutely clear that in what I am saying now, I am quoting Mr. Leon Bernstein. It is not a Jewish principle to turn the other cheek. It is not a Jewish principle to forgive. It is not a Jewish principle to always be tolerant. We must be tolerant of that which is good. Indeed, we must embrace that which is good. But we surely have to reject that which is evil. And I believe that there has been a great deal of reluctance on the part of the Jewish community to come out firmly and loudly and unequivocally in favor of the activation of the death sentence. My friends, there is a very big difference morally, religiously, and legally between having a death sentence but never applying it for fear that the wrong person might be killed, and never applying the death sentence at all because it is believed to somehow be immoral to do. We do believe that everybody is entitled to the protection of the law. But when a criminal whom every person knows was thoroughly guilty gets out again because of a technicality or of a legal confusion, that's wrong. That's immoral. That's not a cause to have pride in a legal system. That's a reason for anger. Our belief is that when a person commits a crime, he becomes an outlaw. That is the origin of the expression. And as such, he renounces and forfeits some of his rights to protection under the law. And at that point, society is entitled to compensation. Let me tell you another bad word. There's a word that we have been taught to regard as primitive, something that we progressive modern men and women couldn't allow into our psyches. Do you know what the dreadful word is? The word is revenge. Relatives of a victim of this kind of crime cannot be expected to return to normal life knowing that a price hasn't been paid by whichever criminal perpetrated this unspeakable atrocity. Revenge is not evil. Revenge is not evil. Revenge is good. It's what enables people to carry on with their lives. But to ask a person to suffer an outrage like this, and then to smile merrily and continue with his life, that's more than flesh and blood can endure. What Mr. Bernstein said precisely was that he hopes that if any good at all can come out of this sad, sad thing, it will be that changes can be brought about and that the message can be sent to those of our leaders responsible that we will not take this anymore, we are so angry, and that we must be able to walk in our streets and we must be able to be safe in our homes, and it is up to them to do whatever is necessary. Our tradition is that if a court of law executes a criminal once in 70 years, it's too frequently. And everybody knows that quotation. But I wonder how many of you know the rest of the discussion. The rest of the discussion says, excepting when we are in the grips of an epidemic of crime. And when that happens, the rules have to be relaxed a little bit in order to send a clear message out to those people, to those barbarians who are rattling the gates of civilization. And the message has to be, and it's a message from all of us, from all decent, honest, law-abiding, upright citizens. This is intolerable. We will not tolerate it. This is inexcusable. We will not excuse it. We will not find reasons and explanations for why they did it. We will punish them for doing it until this stops. We have to send a message out that there is no excuse for what was done to Stephanie. I have a last letter that will be on its way to the Bernsteins tomorrow. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bernstein, I liked looking at your daughter, and she was very, very pretty. Once she came to my house for lunch, and she spent the afternoon playing games with me, and I liked it a lot. I let her win because I liked her a lot. I hope this note makes you feel better, and I hope these notes make us all feel better. But I believe we'll feel better above all if we can look at this sad period not as just a meaningless Los Angeles crime statistic, of which there are so many. But perhaps as the very first monument that might mark the road to a moral recovery in a nation in the grips of a sickening epidemic.
Before we conclude this evening's service, on behalf of the Bernstein family and Pacific Jewish Center, I want to thank you all for coming to be with us this evening. Those of you who did not have an opportunity to sign the memorial book, on your way out, it is there. Please take the opportunity to sign your name and address. It will be sent on to the Bernstein family this week. And thank you once again. We'll call on Gary Dalen to conclude and recite the memorial prayer, El Rachamim, page 454. Again, thanks to everyone for being here. We can remember that tomorrow night is Shabbat. And again, in advance, Shabbat Shalom.